Thank you so much to Tommy Santapietro for bringing us in with wonderful piano stylings. And he does that for us every first Thursday, and he's also going to start doing that for us every third Thursday for Tea and Poetries. Every chance he gets, that's third Thursdays at 10 a.m. He'll start usually 9:15, 9:30. So that's a great treat, extra treat for us.
Amen.
Amen. Hallelujah and amen. That's great. He does that free of charge for the library. So it's wonderful. Yeah. Another round. Today we have a wonderful talk with very local significance, but also global significance, I think we'll see, from Vennie Deas Moore. I know many of you know her already, but I'll reintroduce you. She's going to be talking about small place, deep history, the legacies of Sandy Island. You know, right down the road, I guess we could say, a piece, although you can't get to it by road, thankfully. McClellanville, South Carolina, a little ways down Highway 17 from us here, is the birthplace of Vennie Deas Moore. I think it's best to start there since place is so vital to her work. She's difficult to classify. We could try out several labels: cultural historian, folkways expert, photo documentarian, for starters. She's a photographer, she's also a field worker. That is, when she goes out into her low country surroundings with her camera, she goes to record traditions, people, and places in danger of vanishing. She combines this documentary side of taking photographs with a sense of what's striking or visually particular about the individuals and scenes she encounters, commingling history with art. Her work presents an insider's unromantic view of place and people seldom seen. Vennie Deas Moore's images of Sandy Island reflect a people of the land who follow sustainable practices. Many of the small island community are descendants of enslaved Africans who worked on area rice plantations, and islanders strive to maintain traditional Gullah culture and its sustaining values, including ties to heritage, respect for craft, and stewardship of the land. Vennie's images envision a way of life different from our life and testify to why it is important that Sandy Island culture continues not only to survive, but thrive. Please join me in welcoming Vennie Deas Moore.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Thank you. All these electronics, I don't do well.
We got you on.
Oh, God. I don't do electronics. I still got my dumb phone, and everybody I think realizes because I'm old. No, it's because I like simple. I like simple things. Again, my name is Vennie Deas Moore, and right now it's great to be here. My talk hopefully will brings up a lot of questions, a lot of answers, and I'm not going to be forever, so I'll take questions after I finish my presentation, so I'll be happy to answer your questions afterward. Right now, presently, I am working at the Rice Museum in Georgetown. I'm a curator and cultural historian there, and I've been there since June, although I've known my boss, Jim, for 30 years. And it's interesting when a friend said, "Vennie, you don't have work, so let me put you to work." So I came to Georgetown maybe a year before. I mean, literally a year before I got the job at the Rice Museum, and I really enjoyed being there. Now, the reason I'm bringing that up mainly is because I am from the area, people think I automatically know the area. You know, I didn't learn my area until I started being educated. And how I was being educated is first, believe it or not, I was in medicine. I was a medical technologist, immunologist first. And my education, undergraduate was Johnson C. Smith University in Charlotte. Then I came into medical university, and I got my medical laboratory training, and the Red Cross, of course, the Red Cross. So I was with blood services with the Red Cross. And interesting enough, when I was doing blood services with the Red Cross, we have clients that was routinely our clients, and that was sickle cell patients that we had to run, have compatible blood with. And back 30 plus years ago, when we had sickle cell patients, they normally, the children don't even live long enough to have children. That's how lethal this blood disorder is. And I'm sorry, I'm going off the board a minute, but I'll come back. Interesting enough, with sickle cell patients, we had to start treating them, and how we started treating them was first is exchange transfusion. Again, I said they didn't live long enough to have children when we first got started. And then after that, we started doing apheresis, which was like kidney, when you do dialysis. And so when we started doing that, they would live long enough to have children. They were, you know, we put life to them, so they wouldn't die so early in life. And I just heard about a year ago that we're now doing a therapy on it like leukemia. We're doing bone marrow transplant. So when we do bone marrow transplant, their red cells are totally gone, where they have new cells that will be healthy. It's a very painful disorder. Now, why that has to do with my work? Matter of fact, with sickle cell, it is immunity. It came from West Africa. The people that were exposed in West Africa to the malaria. And through time and generations, Mother Nature changed the red cell so they could tolerate malaria. Okay, that makes sense? But it was too tolerant that they couldn't live, the cells are so abnormal that they couldn't live long enough to have children. So the connection to that in here. When we brought in the African Americans from the West Coast to Green Coast Africa, which was the Green Coast where rice was being grown. And this is the population that we are talking about, Sandy Islanders, the Santee Delta. This is where the Africans came from. And with them, not only did they bring, some of them bring sickle cell, but they also brought, oh yeah, they brought the malaria with them, by the way. They brought the mosquitoes with them. Those mosquitoes that had malaria from West Africa, the Great Coast of West Africa. And they also brought amazing skill. And when I'm in the Rice Museum, because that's why it's called the Rice Museum, at one time in the 1800s, during the period of slavery, we were the wealthiest area in the world, in the country, at least in the country, maybe the world. The guys that were the owners of the rice fields were millionaires, literally millionaires, not equivalent to millionaires. And the reason why they were millionaires is because the rice growers from the Grain Coast of West Africa redesigned, and everybody anywhere around here knows what I'm talking about that's been around here. They redesigned the delta, the swamps, the puff mud, into rice fields. And when they redesigned it in the 1800s, those rice fields were so unique to rice out of Africa, that it was rare. And I, sometime in my talk, I'm sorry, I went to my rice museum talk, but I think you need to know this. I would say the reason why we made $1 million here, because there were only two places where rice was grown of this nature, of this class of long grain tidal rice. That is in Georgetown County and West Africa. So we had a big demand because the land is so unique, it's a big demand for it. And it was such high grade rice. So that's why it was shipped all over the world to be sold. Now let me bump into Sandy Island. Sandy Island was one of those rice fields. Well, you know, associated, matter of fact, we were villages. Okay, Sandy Island was villages. So the rice growers, enslaved rice growers, literally lived in villages like Sandy Island, with Sandy Island being one of them. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So that is the start of Sandy Island, and not only Sandy Island, but all throughout the deltas. And I have a lot of time people come into the museum and say, could you tell me where those villages are? I said, we still got a lot of villages around. And they said, can you tell me where the village is? I said, no, because it's not tourist sites. I wouldn't dare tell you where the villages are because they are not tourist sites. So it's more than Sandy Island that are villages around here. So now that I've said all of that, and you kind of get caught up where I am, my study of folklore, and I think when I became a folklorist, I don't think I even knew what the word was myself, really. When I was at George Washington University, I started studying American Studies and folk life under John Blash. So when I came down here, that's what I was, a folklorist. And a lot of people did not recognize the term. Some people still does not recognize the term. I always say it's like a historian that don't need to remember dates and places and names. And that's one thing I can't do. So anyway, let me get started. What I'm going to do, like I said, this is the equipment I use. This is the equipment I use with, and I'm reading some too, so be careful with the lights. This is the equipment. This is actually a medium format camera. It is it's a roll card, and I don't know if many people know what a roll card is. Most of you too young. 1930, this is the camera that was actually used, and have you ever seen it without my hat? That's my self-portrait. It flops up. It flops up. That's why that you can't see. So I stand there on a tripod and I look into the medium format, and that's how I do it. 1930 is this camera. And it's merely the camera that I used when I was doing my work. I did have 35 millimeters also. Okay, and I'm just going to read this real quickly. As a documentary photographer, my camera records story, one image connecting to the next. When I first began to be a photographer, writer, I studied 1930 photographers like, and writers like Julia Peterkin, Zora Neale Hurston, Doris Ullman, Dorothea Lange, and Walter Evans. I was taken by the story told in the face of the people in the era of the Great Depression, because these are 1930 people. While these photographs often contain faces, they usually are nameless. Okay, so that's where I got my training from, is 1930 photographers and writers. I want to first start at the end with Sandy Island, to explain Sandy Island and let you know the conclusion of Sandy Island, what happened after I was there 4 or 5 years. I'm going to explain the excluded area, what was the final results of our working at Sandy Island. I'm going to read something in a minute, but basically this is the map of Sandy Island. And while we were working, when I was working with the Nature Conservancy in Dana Beach, this is what we designed. We designed the nature trail way at the top. And believe it or not, where the people are living is all the way to the south. That's where the people are living. And what's so unique about this island is that it is surrounded by rivers, even though it's an island. There's no salt water anywhere around it. So that's where the isolation happened, is because the only way you can get to Sandy Island to today is by boat. And what ended up happening is, like the Frosty Island, which I have studied on after the fact, tourism and vacationers decided that they're going to convert it into resort areas. Sandy Island almost had the same feat. And how that was going to get started is a bridge was going to be built over there, leading into one of the 4 roads of Sandy Island, probably that one narrow coming down here. And somehow, I think after experience with the Frosty Island, the state was hooked up on that. They knew what's going to happen. They knew once the bridge would get there and they start putting in nice places to go, the island was gone. So basically that's when I came on the scene, and I was actually hired by the Nature Conservancy to help to preserve the island and Dana Beach and the DOT. Now, interesting enough, when I came to Ireland back maybe in the dates. 1997 is when I did my first publication. It was the end of the issue, not the beginning, 1997, when I wrote an article for South Carolina Wildlife. What I'm trying to explain to you is that all the conservators came in to say, stop right where you are. We are not going to drive a highway across the island because, I think it's 17 and 71 was going to connect, because of the red woodpecker, red-headed woodpecker, or red-cockaded woodpecker. That's what they were concerned about. Why were they concerned about these birds? Mainly because they're almost extinct. And interesting, on Sandy Island, the pine trees was where they lived. So we chopped down the pine trees of Sandy Island, which is a few and far between anywhere in South Carolina. We cut the pine trees down, therefore we would cut out the living habitat for the birds. So that's when I first came onto the scene to work with the state. And all of a sudden they said, oh, you know, we don't only have a rare species out here. We have a very unique culture out here. That was the descendants of the rice growers, the Sandy Islanders. So you need to go out there and understand the Sandy Islanders, and you need to give us some communication, or I would say buffer. You need to be a buffer for us, because we do no more want to destroy the island than we want to destroy the people of the island. So that's where I got into the picture as far as the conservation is concerned. And in 1997, I published an article in the South Carolina Wildlife magazine, and the article is called A World Apart. And I'm going to just read just a teeny tiny piece of it. This will give you an idea of what it was to go on that island. And by the way, I had not been on the island before this time. I was a newbie to this island. I hadn't even heard of Sandy Island. I had already done conservation or research. Well, actually, I was working at the McKissick Museum at that time. And I had studied all over South Carolina, believe it or not, how African Americans celebrated. All over the island, all over the state of South Carolina, that was my job, is to figure out what kind of celebrations African Americans did in South Carolina, which was a serious topic, by the way, but we're not talking about that today. But that's what I was doing. So after that project, and I had an exhibit coming out of the McKissick Museum, a national exhibit, by the way. This is when I came to this. So I'm going to try to read this to you, give you a highlight of what it was like to get to Sandy Island, and what it felt like to be in Sandy Island for the first time. Daylight gradually lightens the sky along the savannah, revealing an unspoiled landscape. Only moments before the moon shadowed a mile-long man-made canal that led from the inland island, bounded by the massive swamps and tidal marshes. With the thrum of his outboard motor, a boat appears through the fog and enters the canal, extending from the island southeastern end. The craft seemingly to hobble as it passes along the river, then reaches his destination. A middle-aged man wearing steel-toed shoes and a winter parka and carrying a metal lunchbox ropes his outboard on the edge of the dock on the mainland. Moments later, he drives away in his automobile. He has parked along the dock. At the end of the day, he will reverse the trip. So that was the experience I had when I was going out to Sandy Island. Now, Sandy Island is about 12,000 acres, and it's along the Waccamaw Neck of Georgetown County, and isolated by water, nested between the PD River on the west and the Waccamaw on the east. The island is bounded on the north by the Gulf Creek and Little Bull Creek, and encircled on the end, the south end by the Thoroughfare Creek. So that basically tells you how that water hangs around Sandy Island. So basically what they were going to do, they were going to take that road and come through 17 to 701. And they felt that was definitely a way of destroying the wetlands. Now, the people I was working with were several people. I was actually hired by the Nature Conservancy, and my boss there out of Columbia was Dale Sobel, S-O-B-L-O. I was also hired by, I was working with DOT, and I was also working with Dana Beach during this project. Now, the good news, the end of the story, I'm gonna give the end of the story. The good news, we're lucky, we won the battle. We literally won the battle. Because in December of 1996, the private property was made available by Sandy Island landowner Roger Milligan, and the Lake Craig Walls at a purchase price of $1 million below the approved value. And the Nature Conservancy literally took over the stewardship of the Sandy Island wildlife land, part that was wildlife. The good news is, where the private land is, that was not open to the public. That was not where the conservation was. The people were able to hold on to the land that they have had since the end of slavery. So they are still holding on to it. And I've had people tell me, well, what happened after you finish your work? I said, I closed the door behind me. And I have a friend here, I think I've seen her once, from Sandy Island. Have I been over there? No. Have I brought anyone over there? No. Because I want that land to keep its privacy, where the private land is. So, that's how it ended. And by the way, they said the late, in my paper I said the late, sorry, getting aging here, that died. Or just mentioned his name a second ago. Oh yeah. Literally, when we got ready to celebrate, that was the end of the story. When we got ready to celebrate, he died about a week before. He died just before the land was turned over. He was supposed to be there, and that's when he passed away. Okay, so that is the end of the story. Now, let me pull you to the beginning of the story, because things just doesn't happen like that. We don't just win. I don't just win my work by accident. It takes years and years of research, years and years of preparation, years and years of understanding who these people are and how would I study these individuals as a folklorist. So that's where I'm going next. And I gotta go backwards. Honestly, I did edit this last night. Let's go backwards. There were people that came before me that was on Sandy Island. And that was Julia Peterkin and Doris Ullman. And I don't know if you ever read the book Roll Pun Roll. Roll Jog and Roll. But they were there in the 1930s. Doris Ullman is a fabulous photographer, folklorist photographer. So that's where I got my training from Doris Ullman's photography. And I enjoy reading Julia Peterkin's books. That's where I got my folk writing from. Do I sound like Julia? I hope. That's where I got my writing stuff. So that's what I first started out doing, is studying people that had done similar folk life work. Because the WPA, I don't know if many people know what the WPA is. That was the period of Depression, where they got writers and photographers out there to document the land during the Depression. Okay, these are the guys who were out there. And this is one of Doris Ullman's photographs. And I'm almost sure this may have been in Sandy Island, because Doris Ullman did a lot of photography in the Sandy Island area. Julia Peterkin. Julia Peterkin is very interesting because she did a lot of research, and I think she came from the outstate of the area, but she was, let me just flip it a minute. She wrote the book Purple April, Black April, Julia Peterkin. And the uniqueness about Julia Peterkin was an American author from South Carolina. In 1929, she won the Pulitzer Prize for novels and literature for her novel, Scholar's Sister Mary. She wrote several novels about the plantation South, especially the colored people of the Low Country. She was one of the few white authors who wrote about African American experience. That's what Julia Peterkin is. And I did a lot of studying with reading her books and her material. Genevieve Chandler. Actually, Genevieve Chandler was from here. And again, she was actually a WPA hire. She worked for the WPA, and one of the books that she wrote with the assistance of her daughter coming through. And if you go into the collection, you see a lot of her documents being, as a folklorist, being held by Library of Congress. And I think they definitely are at the Caroliniana Library, because I was working at through the Caroliniana Library when I was studying her writing. Okay, so that's another one of my mentors, Genevieve Chandler. Zora Neale Hurston, a novelist and a folklorist, an anthropologist. This is me. How I met her was when I was going to school at George Washington University. I love old bookstores. And in Washington, D.C., and that was, I don't know what, 1984? Yeah, I think. I'm at George Washington University, and I go to this bookstore, and I go in the basement of the bookstore. And in the basement of the bookstore, there's a bookshelf where I see this book by Zora Neale Hurston. That's where I found her book, in the basement of a used bookstore. I immediately fell in love with her writing. Again, when you hear my really crazy writing, that's the voice of Zora Neale Hurston. And I think I did something not too long ago called My Mother's House. And I literally used Zora's voice, talking about hanks and hags being in my mom's yard. So that's Zora, that I studied her writing. Now, this ties all the story together. When I got to Sandy Island, needless to say, there's no hotel, there's no stores on Sandy Island, so I couldn't live on Sandy Island. So Sis Peterkin, Genevieve Peterkin, offered me the opportunity throughout my research. I live with her. So every time I came to Sandy Island, that's where I stayed with Sis Peterkin. And you see the porch and you see all that? That's what we sit on. If anybody knows Sis Peterkin, you know what we're doing. We're drinking a cup of coffee. So we're sitting on this porch right here. And when I get out the field, I'm literally sitting on this porch with Sis Peterkin, talking about the work that her mother did. Because her mother, that's an interesting thing. Her mother is Genevieve Chandler, the folklorist, WPA writer, and her mother-in-law is Peterkin. So I'm sitting out here with the daughter and the daughter-in-law are two amazing female writers. And basically, she started editing her mother's work for the WPA. So the whole 4 to 5 years I was out here, this is where I'm living. And think about Sis, she was kind of sick when she was a child, so there were times when she would actually go on the Sandy Island with her mother doing research. So she actually had that experience of going on Sandy Island with her mother doing research. So, and down at the bottom there, you see Billy Baldwin. That's the only man in the picture. Billy is my editor. William Baldwin is my editor, and William Baldwin was her editor. So, I don't know how these things happen. It's not my plan. I didn't put an application to meet these amazing, amazing people. It just happened by God's sake that I met these people and were able to study through these people. So my whole self is through my years and years of studying through these ladies. You know, it took a minute to do all this work, and when I was writing and trying to recap what I did many, many years ago when we were at the point of saving Sandy Island, I said, what came first? Did I get hired first but I knew I met Zora Neale Hurston when I was in D.C., but I don't know when I connected with Sis and understanding those books of her mother and her mother-in-law. I don't know when that happened. I don't know if that's before I got the job, after. I think it's before I got the job. Okay? But it all came together. And this is a wonderful picture of Sis. She's now since have passed away. Now, we'll get into my pictures. Basically, when I came on the waterway, it's still like it is now. There's still a man, not a bridge over there. And people are still right where this Pepsi machine is. This is where their parking lot is on the inland. So that's where they park their cars before they go across the water. This is the canal. This is the canal. When you leave the edge of the inland, then you get on your boat. And by the way, I've had somebody at the Rice Museum, well, I want to get to Sandy Island, to that area. There's a bus excursion out there. And I said, no. I said, what you need to do, we have a young lady here that have a bed and breakfast now out there. She has that. The families themselves have a way of getting you to visit. It is private land. And even if I told him that, he said, well, would they mind me riding my bike out there? I said, it is private land. If you go to the northern tip, that's Nature Conservancy. That's where the reserve is, where you can ride your bike, but not on the land. That's private land. So anyway, it's so hard to get people to understand. People are still out there on their private property. But that's how you get to it, going that way. Then you come through the canal when you get to, and I believe this is no longer here. I think they've changed the port. But once you come all the way across, then you get to the edge of the island. And you literally dock your boat here and get off, and then you come into the island. What I found was interesting about this is that it is, when you get here, there is a river path of the bypass of rivers. And inlet waterway, interstate waterway, I believe? Intercoastal waterway. So that will kind of mess you up because people rapidly with their boats going and coming, and we just have these small boats to get to the island. So that sometimes can be very dangerous. Now, the other end of my story. I got a little bit of money by the Nature Conservancy to do this work over the years. And I met Carl Pyatt, this young man here. And I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to hire Carl Pyatt. The only money I'm keeping is what I used to catch the bus to Sis House from Columbia. So Carl Pyatt was actually my research assistant. He's from the island. At that time, he had taken about a year or two off from coastal and wasn't going to school. So for those years that I was on Sandy Island, he literally either took me over the water and took me to the villages, or but he was my research assistant. So I was one-on-one with the community by knowing Carl Pyatt. And I don't know where he is now, how old he is, what he's doing.
California.
Huh?
He's in California.
He's in California. Amazing young guy. So that's how I got into the community. I did this, come up with my board and got my bicycle and rode in. I was invited into the community. And by Carl Pyatt, that's how I was able to get to interview the families and friends of Carl Pyatt. And actually that is his nephew behind him. And he had welcome to Sandy Island up there, so that's who Carl is. This is Mr. Elliott. Mr. Elliott. A lot of times I've been working, sometimes I'm with Carl, sometimes I'm not with Carl. Not most of the time, but sometimes I'm not. So this is Mr. Elliott walking me to the end of the aisle and saying, Vennie, I'm not leaving you until you're on a boat, because there's no traditional commercial boat. I got to hitch a ride. Whoever the family member is going over the water, I got to hitch a ride with them and get over. So Mr. Elliott may not be taking me over, but he will sit there until someone takes me. So literally one day I saw him sitting there just relaxing until someone picked me up, and that image is when I caught that image of him sitting, waiting with me to get back across the water with somebody taking me. And I think I got a poem here. Let's see. Okay. And this is what I got. The image I got by seeing him. Mirage of southern African savanna. Sons of kings, tall, lean, skin the color of the dark soil of Africa. Their great-great-grandfather were bound and shipped from Africa, still on the edge on the river edge. The images reflect as their great-grandfather images reflected on the river edge. And actually, I have a book. I'll introduce my book here now. I did a journal of my photography for all the work I've done, and it's called Home because home is McClellanville, and I did a chapter on Sandy Island, and that's where this came from. Sometime I get there really early, waiting for someone to take me over through the canal to Sandy Island. That's one of those mornings when I got there real early with the fog. And I think that honestly, this is the best picture I've ever taken. It's just, I would say, it's just at dusk. Not dusk, but it's just at daybreak, what we call it, daybreak. And I actually have a point. Daybreak gradually lightens the sky along the savannah, revealing an unspoiled landscape. Only moments before the moon is shadowed a mile-long man-made canal that led from the inland island, bounded by massive swamps and tidal marshes. That was the point of the prose. This lady here, she unfortunately has also passed away. She was my permission there. She was the community, and please give me her name. She was the community leader. Wilhelmina Potter. And she was just amazing. And you know, a lot of time when I give tours at Sandy Island, at the Rice Museum, they say, well, those people on the island, are they illiterate? I said, please give me a break. They're living on the island. That does not make them illiterate. The reason I'm saying that, Wilhelmina was working the bank. And she was very much responsible for the community. Her mother, since passed away, was one of the oldest women on the island. And soon as you come up the sandy banks, there is Mrs. Pye's house. And I guess she died maybe at age 100. She had to be near there. But
in the 90s.
In her 90s, yeah. So that was Miss Wilhelmina's mother. But again, this woman, she was supportive of me the whole entire time I was there. And I really started photographing before I started sitting people for oral history, because I wanted to make them very, very, very comfortable with telling me their stories. So I think it's almost the latter years of my research that I started putting a tape recorder. But most of the time it was just getting to know people and communicating with people and getting to know their culture, because they're not going to tell you their culture. That you got to feel their culture. And the only way you're going to feel their culture is be within their culture. So therefore, those years, that's what I was doing. I was really, and even though I'm African American, everybody thinks I'm African American, this is my culture. No, I had to learn this culture just like anybody else that came in here. So anyway, that was a year of being with Wilhelmina and trying to understand her culture. This is actually after the rice field ended, Brook Green Garden came in, and the Huntingtons actually started doing things to help develop the Sandy Island, along with hiring the people from Sandy Island to build Brook Green Garden. Okay, so this is actually the school that they put up for the children. So at one point in time, the children didn't even have to leave the island for education. They actually went to the school, and I think today this school has gone to be a museum, if I'm not mistaken, if I read it right. It's a library. Yeah, it's a library. So that building, beautiful building, is still out there on the tip of the, up there on the hill of the island. Now, to talk about schools. This is the only school board, official school board of South Carolina that I know of. So when we got ready to get the kids to school, we put him on. Chris Washington is actually one of the most head-leading African American. He was like a mayor there, long before I was there. But that's who Prince Washington was. That's the name, Prince Washington. And my pleasure, utmost pleasure, was being around with T.T. Tucker. And T.T. Tucker was the school board driver. He still is. Yes. He still is. And he is such a charm. But I tell you, I don't tell anybody but T.T. Tucker to catch a ride with him, because that's still private land. And on Sunday, although this is a government boat, T.T. Tucker, don't tell anybody about this, but T.T. Tucker do take people over to go to church. But he doesn't use this boat back and forth except for pretty much taking the children back and forth across the river, down the canal, and when they get down the canal, the school bus is sitting there waiting on them on the inland, and then the children get on the bus. Okay, so, and you asked about what the automobiles over there. We do have some automobiles over there, but they're usually pickup trucks, and they can't come over, by the way. They got to stay over there.
Some are pretty good, but they use it for transportation, like they want to go home. Some people live a little far from where they land at and get package in their friends and whatever.
Yeah, so, yeah. And I know there was a third island up there that, I forgot the name of the family, but they're near the beach. I call the beach. And you literally, Carl had to take me in the car to go to their house. And let me tell you, it's called Sandy Island because it's sandy. It is not a typical landscape. It's very sandy, and I don't know why it's so sandy, but it is sandy. So it's not a typical, and you don't have no streets and roadways. You have dirt roads and walking path. That's what it looks like. All right, let's keep on. This is that's what I'm calling
Elizabeth Robinson. Elizabeth Robinson.
Elizabeth Robinson. Now she lived near the beach, near where I would have to catch a ride with Carl to take me to her house. And if I'm not mistaken, excuse me, if I'm not mistaken, then her family was lost.
Her family's the one who was in that bad boat wreck.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
She's
she's about,
deceased also.
huh?
She's deceased also.
She's deceased also. But her, one time, we've had some boat accidents where we've lost people.
The last one, yeah.
Yeah, she was the last, her family was the last to be lost, because like I said, when you come across that canal, then you have that rushing waterway that nobody sees you. And I think a lot of boats didn't even have lights on them. I don't know how that happened, but she lost some of her family. But really, what she's doing, she's standing in front of the church. So there is a church on the island also, one church. There used to be two, but for a short time, but this is the main church. And this is a gentleman, and this is not Reverend Weathers. Reverend Weathers were the minister when I was there, but this is not Reverend Weathers. This is someone else speaking in the church.
Gerald Matthews.
Gerald Matthews.
North Carolina.
Oh, he's from North Carolina? That's good.
Pastor now.
Oh.
He was at that time.
Oh, what was he at that time?
This was Reverend Gerald Matthews.
And he was
not our pastor now. Our pastor now is Reverend Britton. Reverend Britton from Georgetown.
okay. Well, when I was there, it was Reverend Weathers.
Reverend Weathers was never our pastor. He was a pastor, but he was not our pastor.
Oh, you want your pastor? Okay. Well, he used to take me around a lot, and he lived on the island. Yeah, Reverend Weathers. Okay, that's when this is in the church. Thank you so much. Now, I talk with Sis Peterkin. This is my mother. This is not Sis Peterkin, but this is Miss
Onita Elliott.
Onita Elliott.
She passed last year. She was 104 years old.
Yeah. Yeah, she passed last year. And let me tell you about Miss Elliott. I may not have a hotel to stay at. I may not have a way to get water, a lemonade. But if I go by Miss Elliott's house, I eat and I drink lemonade. And even when I came back, why did I go back? I don't even remember why I went back. I think I went back with somebody, with Lee Brockington. That's the first time I was on the island for a long, long time. And Miss Elliott was still there. That was 20 years later. 20 years later, Miss Elliott is still alive.